This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this very special episode. We got to interview my amazing little sister, Mary Austin. Katie and I were so curious to talk with her because she's in a phase of life in which the future is so unknown, smack in the middle of deciding what to pursue and how to pursue it. And frankly, she's delightful. I may be biased, but I think that remains to be seen. Here she is.
My name is Mary Austin. I am an undergraduate student at Harding University. I'm studying communication sciences and disorders to be a speech language pathologist. I also am a volunteer coordinator at a nonprofit. I work in a clinic. I do a bunch of other stuff on the side. So that's me.
And you're 12, right?
And I'm 12 and a half.
Wow, you're so well achieved for your young age.
Thank you.
How old are you really?
I'm 20.
20.
Oh my God, I thought you were 19.
Nope.
Sorry.
Birthday.
She did tell me you were 19.
Anna.
So you're in your, what year of college? Second, third?
Third year.
Third year. You got that one wrong too.
Anna.
It's because it's the beginning of the semester, but that's really no excuse because I did visit you during this semester and you were clearly a junior. So sorry
It goes
about
by fast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking with us today. Anna told me something yesterday that blew my mind. I'll just go ahead and start with this.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
You probably know this. Apparently, I don't want to make myself sound stupid, but I'm just going to go for this. Apparently, there's a generation younger than millennials, and you fall in that category.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of right in that spot where nobody knows what to label me.
Right.
Yes.
Which is actually really convenient because I don't know if I check any of the boxes for like when people say like, well, millennials are this way or like, oh, Gen Z is this way. I don't know what categories I fall into.
Yeah.
So for me, it's great. But yeah, I'm right in the middle.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I guess in my head, and I mean, we're both millennials.
Yeah. Elder millennials.
Yeah. But it's like, I feel like that's the cop-out. Everybody's just like, I mean, they'll just point at anybody, right? Like college students, whatever, like, oh, they're millennials.
Right.
Like everybody's just labeling everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just fascinated that there is not a name for your generation yet.
Yeah, like I never realized this until yesterday that it seems like Gen Z is a placeholder name. Like we were Gen Y before they figured out that we were millennials, right? So some people are calling y'all post-millennials or just Gen Z, but I think it'll probably develop into something else. But that's really interesting. You are like at the front leading edge of that generation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the crossover from millennials to Gen Z is, I think, maybe right where I sit. I don't totally know.
Spiritually.
Yeah. It's strange because I'll hear people talk about, like when I first started college, other college people would talk about our generation as if we fell into like the the very last line of millennials. And within the last maybe year, people have started talking about us as if we're the front lines of Gen Z. And I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. And it's like rolling enrollment for, people being born. So it's kind of weird to like draw lines at some point. The exact placement's arbitrary, but, in our human nature to categorize everything, it's like, oh, here's your box. Good luck fitting into it,
Yeah.
What are some things that you're like, no, I'm not a millennial? Like as being younger than millennials, what are the negative things you see about millennials? I'm just curious.
In kind of a more general sense, when other people talk about millennials, the language they use, I don't necessarily agree with, like the kind of the stereotype for a millennial that other people have that are not millennials. I'm like, that doesn't seem positive. But people who are in that, millennial category, I relate a lot to that. But it's more of like the kind of the outside language that's being used and applied to millennials.
Yeah, for better or worse, it's like usually people are complaining about it.
Yeah.
Like when people talk about it, they're blaming the millennials for something or accusing them of being some way that's not favorable. But when you're actually talking to other, or people kind of who are technically in that category, the way that they self-describe is probably a lot more positive anyway, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like, yes, these are people that are like-minded to me. And it has nothing to do with most of the negative stuff that other people on the outside say.
Yeah, I was just curious because kind of to your point, Anna, like I feel like people do blame millennials and here's just one. I'll throw out a stereotype. Millennials are so self-absorbed and they just want to travel and they're not hardworking.
Like entitled.
Okay, here's a generation that I'll speak for myself, when I was in high school, didn't have a personal computer, didn't have a cell phone, and then all of a sudden everything changed. And so suddenly I can work from anywhere in the world. I kind of want to look at those people and say like, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you would do, Anyway, so I was just interested to hear an even younger perspective, and I don't want to speak for you, but I assume like you did grow up with these things, and so what's that like to have everything kind of at your disposal, but you're still trying to kind of navigate and figure out, your place in the world and how other people see you? And
yeah, it's interesting that you say that about travel specifically, because I have a professor this semester who the first day of class looked at everyone in the class and said, I firmly believe that your generation can do anything. You guys can do anything that you want. And he said it in such a positive way, and he went on to call us one of the most optimistic generations that he's been able to work with, which at first I was like, okay, interesting. But then as I thought about it more, it's like constantly getting new information in, which I know people always talk about, like, oh, you guys have always had Google at your disposal. Like, you've been able to look up anything. And sometimes I get a little, like, crotchety about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go look up something in the encyclopedia instead. And which is, I mean, whatever. But then I stop and think about it. And I'm like, that's so cool that I can pull my phone out of my pocket and find out how common measles was 50 years ago. Like,
right.
If I need to know it, I can know it. And also, I can learn things for fun really quickly, really easily. And that has enabled me to continue to learn, I think, more so than if I had to seek out resources from other places. I can just find resources now, which is really useful for me. It keeps me learning. It keeps me growing.
what do you see yourself, I guess, in like 5-10 years down the road doing with that degree?
The cool thing about the field that I'm hoping to enter is that it's really diverse. You can do kind of anything in it. I have, for going on 5 years, really wanted to work in a children's hospital as a speech language pathologist. I love kids. I love working in that hospital setting. I've had some experience job shadowing in it and volunteering in it. And that's been my hope for a long time, is that I can work maybe in the NICU with feeding and swallowing, or even on like an inpatient neurology floor with traumatic brain injury recovery. But every time I say that and I kind of go down that rabbit trail of, I'd love to do this, I'd love to do this, I kind of stop and have to realize, like, honestly, I have no idea. Like, I don't have experience in those things. By the time I get to them, I don't know if I can get a job in that field or if I will enjoy doing those specific things that I assume I'll enjoy. But that's where my interest is now. And so those are my hopes at the moment.
That's a really cool perspective of like knowing that this could change, but I'm just going to get qualified and experience and then figure it out from there.
It's funny because obviously being my sister, you have seen a lot of sort of the opposite of that with me, like figuring out, oh, this thing that I got all qualified for and enjoyed on some level for a while. I realize is like not how I want to spend my life and like my life's work. Sorry if that deterred you at all. but it sounds like you have a really well-rounded attitude about it. There's still stuff that you want to pursue, but it's like you're honoring that idea that experience is the best teacher.
Well, yeah, and I think to that point, it can be really scary when you're thinking you're going to do one thing with your life. And I don't know if a lot of people were kind of brought up that way, but I sort of was. Like, it never occurred to me that, like, I could do more than one thing. And so I got really good at one thing, and then I wanted to do other things, and that was terrifying because I didn't know if I was allowed to do that. So I love that you're leaving room for whatever. And it could be not in the NICU, but also in your field, or it could be something else, or, you know, and nothing is lost by you gaining that knowledge and becoming proficient in that.
I have to imagine, at least with the flexible perspective that you have about your career and your education and where you're headed, you're still really excited about that, and rightfully so, but you have this flexibility built into it. So I wonder if that flexibility mitigates fear, or if there's something else that's more scary that's like your scary thing in life right now.
So I'm really lucky that right now with my studies and with the experiences I'm getting in college, that everything is based around building people skills and learning how to talk to people with sensitivity and complexity and the nuance that the situation requires, if it's a sensitive situation like a medical case, or also just interpersonal skills. So that's been really useful and has been very affirming for me and has really helped kind of encourage me along this path of pursuing the field that I want to pursue. But at the same time, this semester especially, I took on a lot of new roles, and I was like, oh, cool, I get to use these people skills that we've been talking about and kind of practicing. And then suddenly I found myself talking to the president of the board of the nonprofit that I work for, and the chair of our department, and the director of the clinic that I work in, all people I respect so highly and I admire so much, and I want to grow up and be like, but I was so uncomfortable. And I honestly was like, felt genuinely afraid, not of them, but of being in that space where I had to walk in knowing that, like, okay, I'm allowed to be here. I'm allowed to like hold my ground here and hold a conversation here. And so just being willing to be uncomfortable in ways that I knew would push me was, and still is, really scary for me. But I'm getting more experience with it despite it being a scary thing. And that's hasn't made it less scary, but it's made me know that I can still get through it even though it is scary.
Love it.
That's awesome. We were talking about this yesterday. It seems to be that even once you do something, it's less scary the next time, right? And so that's a good point, though. There's just a lot of new things, and it's always going to feel scary at first.
Yeah, totally. And I think those new roles and stuff, all those sort of little vignettes of times where you find yourself in this kind of intimidating position and you're trying to like hold your ground and be present and all that. Each time individually, maybe it doesn't feel less scary, but I bet a year from now, the practice of doing that will be less scary. On the spectrum, it starts getting less scary, but you're still in kind of like the beginning of getting experiences like that. So I think it's safe to say that broadly you can expect for it to get less scary at some point. I just can't tell you when that point is.
Yeah, and I have been recognizing that more and more as this semester went on. Right at the beginning of my semester this year, I had, like I said, a bunch of new opportunities kind of put in front of me that were really exciting. And so I said yes to them. And then when it was time to actually start participating in them, I was kind of scared out of my mind. But I couldn't say no. I'm a very firm believer in making my yeses yeses. So I was like, okay, I said yes to this thing. I have to figure out a way to do it. Like, I am so uncomfortable right now. I feel like I'm either not qualified or just like, maybe they picked the wrong person. I don't think they actually wanted me for this. But then realizing like, no, I am capable of this. And yeah, it's still going to be scary, but I can do it. And then as I've been doing all of those things every single week for now 8 weeks, it's gotten it's gotten more comfortable to a degree, but it's also just helped me know, like, even if this stays uncomfortable, I can still function in that. Like, I can still make this work. And I'm finding now, within the past maybe 4 weeks, I've really found out, like, I can really enjoy it. I can have a blast while I'm doing it, even if it's not, the easiest thing or the most, comfortable thing, the thing I'm used to the most. I can still make that a really exciting experience.
That's so good. I'm going to write that down.
You are the most optimistic generation. I love it. Well,
It's really good.
Yeah, like, I mean, the idea of like, hey, it's all right if you have to tolerate discomfort for a while.
Yes.
Is important. Oh my gosh, so important. But also, man, I think that's pretty revolutionary to think I can be uncomfortable and enjoy it at the same time.
That's so good.
It's totally changed the way I go about my business. Like,
everybody says, I feel like it's so overused. Everybody says, like, enjoy the journey, right? And I kind of was thinking about that a lot when I was writing my book, and I was trying to think about it because it is when you're learning something. So for me, it was in the field of photography. And so I can remember being terrible at it. I was very uber aware of my limitations, at least in the beginning. And I'm not sure that ever went away, actually. But it was uncomfortable. It was almost this fear of like, okay, I have clients here. I've got to make them happy. If I don't know how to, make this light look a certain way, I'm not going to show them, right? Like, I'm going to just act like everything's fine and maybe I can figure it out later. And this fear, all these emotions. And yet, I hope this doesn't sound like pretentious or whatever, but when I sort of got to a place where I was super comfortable going into those shoots and knowing like, yes, I know how to manipulate this light and I know how to use this and I can make this look great. Some of the joy is gone. Like, some of that rush was gone. I have to admit, like, it definitely changes the experience.
Yeah. And to me, the word that comes to mind for that is mastery. You mastered it and it's like, yeah, it's not really a challenge anymore. And there's a thrill that's associated with the challenge, like.
Yeah. And so I have to relate that to any task. And I have to try to remind myself of that in my day to day. Like, I hate not being good at something. I hate not being the best at something. But what am I going to miss if I don't at least enjoy the process? So I think what you said was brilliant.
This totally explains why I hate scrubbing toilets. I am a master toilet scrubber. And there's there's no joy in it for me
I did
anymore.
not know. You're ridiculous.
I know.
But also, I had no idea you were so good at it.
Girl,
Maybe you can demonstrate later.
Listen. Maybe I will. No, I rather enjoy cleaning things. Sometimes, like rarely. But then when I enjoy it, I super enjoy it.
That
anyway,
was really funny.
Thank you. Not to trivialize what you just said at all. I just was like, I can't not say this because I think it's funny. I do want us to talk to you about creativity because in my experience, you're very creative in like every sense of the word. Artistic creative, problem-solving creative, any kind of creative you can think of, you have demonstrated in your 12 and a half years. So I'm just like, I want to hear what you have to say about creativity.
Actually, it's kind of perfect that we just talked about the idea of being uncomfortable and enjoying it. And for me, that leads right into creativity because sometimes I use creativity as a coping mechanism. I was asked to start giving writing lessons at the nonprofit that I work at. I work at a hippotherapy center. So they do equine assisted therapy, and I've started giving writing lessons once a week that are not therapeutic. They're just fun and help teach this little girl that I work with about horses and about riding and about safety and grooming and all kinds of stuff. And they asked me to do it. I said yes. I was so excited. I have almost 15 years of horse experience. So I was like, this is perfect. I get to do something that I love. And then I realized I've never taught this before. So I felt then completely unqualified. And so I was spending all this time, like before lessons, just thinking about it. And I got to a point that even though I was still nervous, I was bored of thinking about it. Like, I'm so sick of being nervous about this thing. I'm so sick of it that I started thinking, okay, how can I make this the most exciting thing possible for this little girl? She already loves horses, so that's half the work. Like, she's excited to come out. But how can I make it fun for her in a way that's going to teach her these fundamental concepts that's not like, and now we do this because this. Like, how can I incorporate a game or an activity or something that for her feels like play, but it's still going to teach her as we do it over time that, okay, you hold your reins this way, you sit this way, you get the horse to move this way. That what initially was just like kind of a nervous fixation on something that I started to dread because I was so nervous about it every week. And the lessons would always go fine, but I was like, it's going to be bad next week. Something's going to, like, not that something bad would happen, but that she would be really bored and I wouldn't explain a concept well enough. And I had to tell myself, stop focusing on being nervous. Like, yes, you're allowed to be nervous right now. You can be scared of this new experience, but stop focusing on it and start doing something that's actually going to help the experience. It's going to help me. It's going to help the little girl that I work with. It's going to make it more fun for both of us. It's going to make the lesson go by faster for both of us and not just feel like we're just standing around talking about boring things.
Yeah.
And kind of just figuring out what I have at my disposal to make that work.
Yeah. I have an observation for you.
Yeah.
This could be like extrapolated and then applied to other things. But it sounds like the two things that shifted your gears was to go, well, three things. One was to give yourself permission to feel how you feel about it. Right?
Mm-hmm, that's a big one.
You're not hung up fighting how you feel about it. 'Cause you're like, nope, that's okay. That's just how I feel. But also, sidebar to that number one thing is that you weren't letting your feelings just drive the bus and dictate how you reacted to it either. So you're acknowledging it, but you're not letting it take over. That's amazing. See, you are well adjusted. The next thing was that you shifted your focus to have more of an other awareness. You were aware of your student and trying to think of it from her perspective and trying to help her. So your focus became more on her and helping her. And then the third thing was that you tried to inject some fun. And I think that, you know, this is definitely my like therapist brain right now talking about this, but I think it's, can you tell? Yeah. But is my therapist showing? But I think it's like seriously so just like overlooked so often when people are facing challenges, everything's so serious. And it's not that the outcome or the cause aren't important in those situations. They are kind of serious situations, but even this is a serious situation. You've agreed to teach someone something and you got to deliver on your promise, you know, like that's important to you. And so people forget that fun actually helps. It's not like here's the serious stuff and when I master that, then I can have fun. You know, like again, it goes back to that whole dichotomy that really is not helpful when it comes down to it. That's not a helpful way to see it, you know? So I think that's interesting. It's like others awareness, fun, and sort of acknowledging your feelings about it. You're amazing. How well adjusted.
You guys are both so smart.
I
was just going to say, we spent a lot of our youth reading encyclopedias. So, you know.
Because you had dial-up.
That's right.
Sometimes that dial-up tone haunts my dreams.
Right?
Man, I need to see if I can find a clip of that and I'll put it right here.
Oh, please don't. So it sounds like you're super busy. So you're doing horse lessons. You're right in the middle of third year college. Are there ways that you've been able to find creative outlets or use your creativity in the midst of all the busyness?
Yeah. So for me, it's become, as you may have been able to tell from some of the ways I talked about how I think about experiences and how I think about like new experiences or scary experiences. I have a tendency to really want to get things perfect. Like I want them to be the best on the first try. But
one wing.
There it is. See, and I knew that you would say that. I was like, Katie's gonna point out.
Well,
that
I told you. I already
wing.
disclaimed it can be a meanie.
We're going to have to put an Enneagram link in the show notes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But now, this semester, I mean, I am to the point where I almost have to schedule my own bathroom breaks. I'm so busy all the time in ways that I've just never been busy before. It's a completely different school year than the past two have been. The past two were busy, but there was still a lot of downtime. There's almost no downtime. I have about 1 day a week that I've got like a couple hours in the evening to study, basically. Other than that, it's like study as you go.
Wow.
So I don't have time, and it's been such a blessing when I say this. I don't have time anymore to sit and fixate on what I'm going to do. I just have to do it or it's not going to get done. So if I decide, man, I really want to write, I've started playing mandolin, and something that helps me learn how to play it better is I've started writing music for it. And so I'll sit down in my room. I've got, a 30-minute break, and I really want to do something musical today. So I will sit down in my room, and I don't have time to think like, what would be a really thoughtful way to go about this? Like, I just have to write something down and kind of see if it works. And if it doesn't, that's okay. I'll come back to it. I'll write something new next week. It's not quality control anymore. I know that I need to create because it helps me function as a human being when I do create. And so it's just me like throwing out all my ideas that like, as soon as I have one, I'm like, okay, let's try it. And that's translated into the work that I do. That's happened at the nonprofit that I work at, where I'll be like, I had 30 minutes and I built us a new website. And they're like, you did what? I'm like, I built us a new website because I knew we needed one. And it was creative for me, so I did it. And having ideas for after school programs and just pitching them to people. It sounds reckless, and I don't mean that I'm just like yelling at everyone like, I have this idea. But it's kind of, I can't be as inhibited about it anymore, because if I'm so worried about, well, I need to make sure every single detail is in line in my plan before I even pitch it to someone, or before I even start making music or whatever. If I'm writing, I just have to do it. I just have to write. I just have to tell people about my idea. And if it goes from there, it goes from there. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, which is kind of a weird state to be in, where I'm just kind of pursuing whatever is going to take the next step, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
It does.
I think that's really smart, and I think probably really helpful to you, since you do have that perfectionist side, and I can relate to that, of just doing it, just putting it out there. I think probably a lot of artists could relate to that, of just, I know people who have been working on albums for years, and we're all just like waiting on it, like we're so excited for them and waiting on it, but they're not sure if it's ready yet. To a certain extent, it won't ever be ready. It won't ever be perfect. That's for sure. So at some point you've got to just put it out. But I'm really curious. So you said that, you function better as a human if you create. How did you learn that? Or was there a time when you weren't having a creative outlet and that led you to that decision, or how did that come about?
So funny enough, I realized that kind of officially this semester. A lot has happened this semester. Can you tell? It's going to sound really random, but it'll circle back around. I'm in a rock climbing class, which is really fun.
Yes, you are.
Just beginning it. Yeah. And we were working on bouldering, so we're just like free climbing around this little gym, and it's really fun. And one of my friends who's in the class, who's a really good climber, got into a point where she was kind of in a bind. She was on the wall, but she couldn't go up. She couldn't go down. She didn't want to fall off the wall because, we've got big like mats, but it's still not, you still don't want to just free fall out of the air. It's not a fun experience. And she finally figured out a way to get back down, and she dusted off her hands and she looked at me and she said, I think it's really good for my brain to be in situations where I feel stuck and I have to figure out a way to get out of it. And I was like, okay, and then I kept climbing because I didn't think anything of it.
Cool,
and then,
girl.
Yeah, I was like, that's awesome.
Good story.
Right, yeah. But then a few days later, I had started, this was pretty early in the semester, so I was still in kind of that nervous cycle of like just worrying about things but not doing anything about it, like not changing anything. And so I thought of what she had said of, it's good for my brain to be in situations where I feel stuck. And I was like, man, do I feel stuck about these new opportunities? They're such good opportunities, but I feel like I don't know how to move forward in them. I feel like life is full of moments where you're going, and then the train just stops on the tracks and you're just kind of stuck and you're like, okay, this isn't what I was expecting. I could keep moving, but I'm not, and I'm trying to, and I'm not getting anywhere. So for me, it's like, okay, how am I, to continue with the train metaphor, I guess, like, how am I going to make myself move forward? Am I going to get out and walk? Is it going to be like just me working really hard on something to get where I'm going? I know that's very abstract. Or is it going to be like, I'm going to start working in a community that's really creative and let other people's creative ideas influence mine and make me a better creator, whether that's in writing music or writing poetry, or whether it's in the way I plan therapy activities for my speech client, or the way that I plan lessons for my horseback riding student, or the way that I just function in classes, the way that I interact with people. Am I gonna let myself be a cardboard box, or am I gonna let myself really let the most eccentric parts of me come out in the way that I interact with people and let them see more sides of me? And I think that brings out more sides of other people. So when I'm my most creative self, when I'm letting myself not just make things, but also just like be a creative person, let that be part of my identity, I think that changes how I interact with people, and then that changes their relationship, and that makes me a better friend, a better roommate, a better student, a better teacher. I think it affects all aspects of my life.
I love that.
That last statement that you made is like the whole case for why it's important to see yourself as creative.
Yeah.
Dang, that's so huge.
To let yourself have access to that part of you.
Right.
You know, because we do believe it's in everybody, but not everybody is actively out there.
Yeah.
Again, I have to say it. I say this a lot, but the definition of creativity is problem solving. And so the whole time you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. You're nailing it. Like, you, in every aspect of your life, you're not just saying, oh, this is a problem, I feel stuck. You're looking at how you can solve the problem and make the situation better. And that.
Yeah. And even enlisting other people and the reciprocity of creativity to help you get unstuck. Like, that's huge too. The community part of it. Also, your train metaphor was on point because there's a train going by honking its train horn while you were saying that in our audio. So.
Yes. I don't think it was stopping, but maybe it had to because it was honking for a long time.
Right.
I imagine people were on the track again.
I planned that train.
It was perfect.
It was. That's awesome.
Yeah. And even from a slightly, I don't know, maybe more practical point of view, I was listening to something yesterday that was talking about the benefits of meditation and journaling. And just to be completely honest, I don't practice meditation a lot. It's something I'm still just kind of learning about. But basically what they were saying was to be able to give your brain kind of a break and to change task is so valuable. You're over here in college scheduling your bathroom breaks. You're so busy. You know, we can relate to that, being busy with a million jobs. It feels so counterintuitive to even take a break, or let alone to make time for something like learning an instrument. I mean, that's amazing. But like, how many people would say, well, I don't have time for that. I can't even take 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And even if I did, speaking for myself here, how fast am I actually going to learn that instrument if I only have 30 minutes a day? Like, that's not fast enough. You know, we tell ourselves all these stories, but the point being, it's so important. Like, take whatever time you have for things.
Yeah, it's like, it's not going to be worthwhile unless it checks all these boxes every time. And that's perfectionism.
Yeah, that's so wrong when you actually think about how a process works. Like,
Yes.
like, you don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to participate in the process. And you have to be happy with being in the process.
Yeah, there's a little bit of acceptance of being in the process. It's funny because on this podcast, and I'm sure Katie is, you know, hopefully not sick of me saying this, but I do feel like a broken record in life right now because it's where I'm at too, of reminding myself constantly that things are a process and that they're supposed to be a process, and that I'm glad and grateful to be in a process. It's almost a cliche in therapy. Well, it's a process, you know, like it is a process, but it's a cliche for a reason. You know, like that one is legit. When you can sort of make peace with just the context of being in a process, that opens you up to maybe even have a better process.
Yeah, and that really applies to me right now in college. For as long as I can remember, I would say my mom, Anna and I's mom, our mom.
Our mutual mother.
Our mutual mother. Like if I'm trying to understand something that I'm learning in class and maybe I don't understand it to a way that I'm satisfied, I just want to know it. Like I'll say like, I just want to like have that end goal already achieved. Like I just want to know this information. Our mom will tell me, if you already knew it, you wouldn't be there.
Well, I think it's the same thing as the journey we were talking about. Yeah, if you already were perfect at it the first day you started, there would never be any fear. There would never be anything driving you towards getting better.
Yeah, no growth.
Yeah, and like that just sounds like super boring, you know? Like,
boo. I have a little question for something you said earlier. You try to let your yeses be yeses. What does that mean?
So for me, that just means being true to my word. So which keeps me accountable to myself. That means that if I say yes to something, if someone says like, hey, MJ, next week I need you to like, can you, I'm trying to think of a good example.
Clean my toilet.
Yeah, like can you clean my toilet every Saturday for the next 5 months? And if I just say yes, for me, that means like, yeah, I'll be there. I will be cleaning your toilet every Saturday for the next 5 months.
Right.
But sometimes people ask me things that either I know aren't going to be good for me to do, because if I have such a busy schedule, like it's just going to stress me out. It's going to maybe take time away that I've set aside for myself, which I try to keep really, my time is my time. And I'm trying to tell myself that that's not selfish, because it's not. It's important. It's necessary. I try to set my boundaries really strictly. And then if I say yes to something, I have to have said yes to it. Like I have to have acknowledged, yes, this won't infringe on those boundaries. Yes, yes, I can do it. Yes, it won't be something that I'm going to be absolutely dreading for the next 5 months every Saturday. But for me, it's actually been good, because I said yes to a lot of things that I ended up kind of dreading, because I was like, I didn't think about it. I didn't think it through. And now I said yes. And for me, that means I have to follow through on it. But it pushed me in a lot of ways. So it's got upsides and kind of downsides.
Yeah.
It's being willing to say no, which is really scary for me.
Hard.
That's another big scary thing for me, is saying no, because I am a people pleaser. I want to be as available as possible and as flexible as possible and as helpful as possible, but sometimes I have to say no.
It just makes me think back to your train metaphor. It's like you feel stuck when you commit to something. And you mentioned this earlier too, that to some people, the way that you're operating may seem reckless. It occurred to me kind of, this is why it's not. Because when you feel stuck because you committed to something that you maybe don't have the bandwidth or resources or qualification or experience or whatever you need to do it, the way that you're going about this, anytime you're in a situation like that, you're learning either about saying no, which is a super important skill that will prevent you from getting stuck in the future, and maybe more importantly, how to navigate it, even if you have to fly by the seat of your pants, even if you're not prepared, even if you're not qualified, you're learning to trust yourself when you're having to wing it. Applied appropriately, I think both of those things are going to help keep you from getting stuck. But some people go all one way or all the other way, like some people just learn from that experience, oh, I'm just going to say no to everything then. I've bitten off more than I can chew, and now I need to hide under a rock and not say yes to anything. And I think it's really important that that's not your reaction. It's a little more nuanced than that, because that to me is just a fear response.
Yeah.
And you've got fear plus in your response. You've got fear that you work with and you work through and you use it instead of letting it
shut you down.
Right.
This has been great.
It has been great.
Do you have other questions before I ask the final
the
dinger?
Kicker?
Yeah.
No.
MJ.
I'm just afraid she's about to get kicked.
We saved the hardest question for last.
What's the J stand for?
Yes.
That's the hardest question I'm asked.
Is it Jane?
No, it's not. Same letters, different arrangement.
What? What is it?
Same letters as Jane.
Jean.
Yes.
Mary
Thanks,
Jean.
Mom.
Thanks,
How
Mom.
Cute.
It is cute.
I was just thinking, I literally was thinking this earlier. I'm a dork. So one of the first songs I ever wrote, a long time ago, was called Mary Jane, and it was a reference to Spider-Man's girlfriend.
Woohoo!
But also Alanis Morissette has a song called Mary Jane, and I was just thinking, in your honor, we should write another Mary Jane song, but now...
It has to be Mary Jean.
Mary Jean, it's coming. We'll do it.
It's a Mary Jane by Alanis Morissette mixed with Billie Jean by Michael Jackson.
Mary
Brilliant.
Jean is not my sister.
I'll have to sing it.
Yeah, Katie will have to sing.
It wouldn't be honest if she sang it. Okay. We have a lot to think about, so we're going to get off here and work on that song. You shared so much wisdom with us today. Thank you so much. What advice would you give to those that are still trying to figure out what career path to pursue, or maybe just how to get unstuck?
The first thing that came to my mind is don't let the fear of the unknown freeze you in your tracks. If you don't know what you're going to do, that's okay. First of all, that's so totally okay. I tell so many of my friends that all the time, or like sweet new college freshmen who are like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, that's okay. That's so okay. I sometimes don't know what I'm going to do. I all the time don't know what I'm going to do. I can't tell the future. I don't actually know what I'm going to do. You have to be willing to try things out. If you don't start just trying different experiences, trying to study different things, you're never going to find out what you actually enjoy doing. So maybe it's not the first 5 things that you try that you even remotely like. Maybe it's not the first 25 things that you even think you could possibly do if someone paid you $100,000. But you'll never know unless you try them again and again and again and again, all these different and exciting things, and things that you think you might be interested in, and things that you maybe think that you're not interested in. Like, try it for a week. Give it, read something about it. See if it remotely interests you. Maybe you don't know enough about it. Maybe you need to find out that there's an opportunity that you didn't know about. But you have to try it first. And you have to not let the idea that, well, since I don't know what to do, I don't want to try it and find out I don't like it. Well, how are you going to find out that you do like it if you don't try it first? So I think that's a good way to find something that motivates you. And I also think it's a good way to first get you moving. But I also think it's good if you get stuck to maybe try something new, or try something new that's related to what got you stuck in the first place.
So smart. Generation smart. That's my input.
Yes!
Yeah, thanks for giving us hope for the future of,
Yes.
of the planet with your
That
generation.
is real.
Will you keep us updated on the scary things you're doing?
Of course.
Cool.
Yay. Thanks seriously for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again for joining us today. If you like what you've heard, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. Tune in next week for a very special episode about the 3rd song we're releasing as Jasper and Jade. It's called Close, and we're going to tell you the backstory of the song and how we started writing together and eventually decided to record some music. I need to move because my butt is asleep. So please give me a moment to move.
Hey, this is an environment of honesty, so you're good.
That's right.
I mean, yeah.